My fiancé told me, my ex asked me to marry him yesterday and I said yes. Sure, she picked better. I told the truth to the one person who mattered. The smile on Chloe's face, as she sat across from me, still wearing my engagement ring, will forever be burned into my memory. Because in that same moment, she casually announced she was engaged to another man. Everything I thought I knew about my life, about us, just dissolved. I'd just flown a brutal 3-day rotation, the kind that leaves you bone-tired and questioning every life choice. All I wanted was greasy food and to crash on our couch, but the air in our kitchen was thick with something else, a cold, unsettling quiet. I was still in my uniform, my overnight bag clutched in my hand, trying to compute. She said Liam had proposed yesterday, and she'd said yes. Like she was announcing a promotion, expecting me to high-five her for her personal growth. I just stood there, my mind reeling. Had I fundamentally misunderstood how relationships worked? Had I spent 3 years with someone who thought monogamy was just an option? She kept that unnerving smile, waiting for my reaction, and it hit me, she genuinely believed this was a mature conversation. My name's Noah. I'm 33, flying regional routes out of Denver. Up until that precise moment, I thought the most stressful part of my job was landing in crosswinds. This was after a rotation that had me awake at 4 a.m. in an Omaha hotel, debating if the coffee maker was worth the effort. I always called Chloe after landing, every single time. And she always picked up on the first ring. So when she asked what time I'd be home, I didn't think twice. She was waiting when I walked in, wearing that strange look people get when they've rehearsed something, a mix of nervous and determined that screams, "You're about to hear something you don't want to." Chloe sat down, folded her hands like we were in a business meeting, and told me she needed to be honest. She was 30, in pharmaceutical sales, beautiful in that polished way that hides all the effort. And apparently, for the past 2 months, she'd been having lunch with her ex-boyfriend, Liam. She called it not cheating, because they were just talking, working through old feelings, being mature about complicated emotions. Liam had proposed yesterday, right there in the restaurant. She'd said yes because she realized she'd only been with me because I was stable and safe and convenient. She actually used the word settled, like it was a perfectly normal thing to say to the man you were planning a wedding with. She'd chosen passion over comfort, real love over just getting along, hoping I'd understand she was following her heart. The whole time, she had this expression like she was performing some brave, personal journey, and I was just a chapter she'd outgrown. I managed to ask, "Are you seriously telling me this while wearing my ring?" She looked down at her hand as if she'd forgotten it was there, slid it off, placed it on the table between us, and said she wanted to do this the right way, with honesty and respect. The words themselves weren't what broke me. It was her absolute calmness. Like she'd made a tough decision and deserved applause for her maturity. She sat there, hands folded, looking at me with a gentle pity, like I was a puppy who'd just been told we weren't going to the park. I just told her to leave. She looked offended, genuinely offended, as if my reaction was completely unreasonable. She stood up, grabbed her purse, walked to the door, then turned back. She said something about hoping I'd eventually be happy for her. As if I was supposed to process this, reach enlightenment, and arrive at gratitude. 20 minutes later, she texted. "I know this is hard, but I truly hope you can appreciate that I was honest instead of going behind your back." I stared at that message for 10 minutes, trying to comprehend the kind of person who believes they deserve praise for efficiently blowing up someone's life. The sheer audacity, asking for credit, wanting me to thank her for demolishing our future so directly, made me wonder if I'd ever known her at all. That night, I called my sister, Sarah. Woke her up well past midnight. She listened to everything without interrupting. When I finished, there was a beat of silence, then she said something that resonated deep. Chloe didn't confess because she felt guilty. She confessed because she wanted permission. That hit me harder than anything. It was true. She hadn't come with remorse, but with an expectation of understanding, maybe even approval. The next day, her parents called. Both of them on speaker. I thought, finally, an apology. acknowledgement that their daughter did something insane. Instead, her dad launched into a speech about Chloe making a difficult choice and how they hoped I could respect her for following her heart. Her mom chimed in, saying at least Chloe hadn't been deceitful, that she'd been brave enough to be honest, and that I seemed to be taking this too personally. Too personally? My fiancé leaving me for another man was something I should view objectively, like a news report about someone else? I asked how exactly I was supposed to take it. Her dad said, "These things happen." The mature thing would be to wish her well. I hung up without saying goodbye. Sat in my apartment, wondering if I was losing my mind, if I'd stumbled into an alternate universe where basic human decency didn't exist. For the first few days, I kept blaming myself. Maybe I missed signs. Failed her somehow. Maybe being a good partner wasn't enough. I flew my routes, came home to an apartment that felt too quiet, trying to reconcile 3 years of my life with the word settling. It echoed in my head, settled. Like I was a consolation prize she'd accepted while waiting for something better. Ben, my co-pilot and closest friend, noticed I was off during a flight to Austin. Caught me staring blankly during our descent checklist. After we landed, he cornered me in the crew room. I gave him the short version. He just stared for a long moment, then said, "Brother, that's not normal." You know that's not normal, right? Hearing someone confirm I wasn't crazy for being devastated, that this wasn't just a normal breakup I was overreacting to, helped more than I can say. The worst part was how completely she'd rewritten our relationship in her head. As if every shared moment was just her biding time until something better came along. I thought about our trip to Sedona last fall. How she'd held my hand on the hiking trail, told me she couldn't wait to marry me. How she'd picked out flowers for a wedding that, apparently, was never going to happen. Had she been lying then? Or had she convinced herself it was true in that moment, only to decide later it was never real? Was she the kind of person who could feel deeply then just switch it off? I couldn't sleep, couldn't focus. Kept replaying that conversation, searching for the moment I'd misunderstood who she was. Ben saw how bad it was getting. Told our supervisor I needed time off. Basically forced me to take a week of personal leave. I spent those days in my apartment, trying to make sense of my shattered life. Drinking too much coffee, scrolling through old photos, desperate for some clue I'd missed. That's when I made the mistake of looking Liam up online. LinkedIn. First. Same pharmaceutical company as Chloe. Ah, the convenient lunches. Then Facebook. Every single post featured his mother. And I mean every single one. Birthdays, holidays, random weekdays. Just him and his mom doing normal things that, collectively, felt deeply abnormal. The comments were worse, all from her. My special boy, so proud, nobody loves him like I do. He was 34 years old. I kept scrolling, looking for anything that wasn't about his mother, any sign of an independent life. Then I found a post from 2 weeks ago about his engagement. No mention of Chloe. No photo of them together. Just a vague starting a new chapter with a picture of him standing alone in front of a restaurant. I sat there, phone in hand, and that's when it really hit me. I hadn't just lost my fiancé to another man. I'd lost her to someone who, apparently, couldn't make a single decision without his mother's approval. I thought about calling Chloe, asking if she knew what she was getting into, if she'd seen the red flags visible from space. But then I remembered she'd called our 3 years settling. She'd made her choice. Passion over stability, excitement over safety, and apparently, a man whose Facebook looked like a shrine to maternal devotion. I didn't know it yet, but I was about to find out just how catastrophic that choice really was. The next few days were a fog. Going through motions, but nothing felt real. I'd wake at my normal time, make coffee, then realize I had nowhere to be because Ben had put me on mandatory rest. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Chloe at that table, calmly explaining how she'd settled for me, and I'd jolt awake, heart racing like I was in an emergency descent. My apartment felt wrong now. Every corner held a memory I didn't want. The couch, the kitchen, even the bedroom felt contaminated. I'm trained not to panic when an engine fails. Trained to run checklists when everything goes wrong. But my brain had decided that the word settled was more urgent than any actual emergency I'd ever faced. Ben showed up on the fourth day with takeout, refusing to leave until I ate. He sat across from me at my kitchen table, told me I looked like hell. I probably did. Unshaved, barely showered, same shirt for 2 days. He asked if I'd heard from Chloe. I told him about the text, the one asking me to appreciate her honesty. He actually laughed. Not a kind laugh, but the kind that means someone's done something so ridiculous you can barely process it. He said I needed to stop torturing myself and start figuring out who I'd actually been engaged to, because the Chloe I described didn't match the woman who'd just blown up my life with a smile. That night, I went deeper into Liam's social media. The more I looked, the worse it got. He lived exactly half a mile from his mother. I found that out from a post where he tagged his location as her house, mentioning popping over for dinner, which seemed to happen about 4 times a week. His emergency contact on his company profile? His mother. Not a spouse, not a sibling. His mother. Photos of them at restaurants, movies, the grocery store. Doing everything together like they were a couple, not a parent and adult child. I found posts from his friends making jokes about it. Gentle teasing about him updating his relationship status to complicated with a photo of his mom. He'd respond with laughing emojis, like it was all just good fun. Then I found something that made me sit up straight. No posts about Chloe. None. No engagement announcement. No photos of them together. Nothing indicating he was in a relationship at all. The new chapter post was just him, alone, vague. And when I checked the comments, his mother, Eleanor, had written that she was so proud of her boy for making mature decisions. Not congratulations. Not welcome to the family. Just pride that he'd made a decision she apparently approved of. I screenshotted everything. Why? Maybe I thought I'd need proof later that I wasn't making this up. The next morning, I called David, a college friend who'd known Chloe back then. Someone I hadn't talked to in years, but who'd been around during her first relationship with Liam. I asked him what he remembered. There was a long pause, the kind that means you're about to hear something you won't like. He asked why I wanted to know. I told him Chloe had left me to go back to Liam. He said one word, no. Like I'd just told him she was walking into traffic. Then he told me the story. Chloe and Liam had dated 7 years ago, back when we were all in our 20s, still figuring things out. 8 months, apparently serious, talking about moving in together. Then one day, Liam just ended it. No warning, no discussion. Just stopped answering her calls and blocked her number. David said Chloe had been devastated. Weeks trying to understand. Kept asking mutual friends what she'd done wrong. When someone finally got through to Liam, he said his mother didn't think they were compatible, and he needed to respect her judgment. His mother didn't think they were compatible. Chloe had been ghosted because a 30-year-old man's mommy said no. David said he'd always wondered if Chloe had really moved on, or if she'd just been waiting for another chance. He guessed he had his answer now. I hung up, trying to process. Chloe had left me for a man who'd dumped her because his mother told him to. A man who'd broken her heart so badly her friends still remembered it 7 years later. And she thought this was choosing passion over settling. I felt sick. Not just hurt anymore, but genuinely nauseous, because this meant she knew exactly who Liam was and had chosen him anyway. That afternoon, I did something I'm not proud of. I drove past his mother's house. Didn't stop, didn't get out. Just drove by slowly, like I was looking for an address. Normal house, normal neighborhood. Nothing special. But there were 2 cars in the driveway. One was the model I'd seen in Liam's photos. At 2 p.m. on a weekday, he was at his mother's house. I kept driving, went home, and opened my laptop. I found Eleanor's Facebook. Public profile, probably because she wanted everyone to see how proud she was of Liam. Every post about him. Baby photos, childhood stories, current updates, like he was her entire personality. She posted about his job promotions, hobbies, movie opinions, literally everything. There were posts about his previous relationships too. I found one from 7 years ago, right around when David said they'd broken up. She'd written something about how grateful she was that her son had the wisdom to recognize when someone wasn't right for their family. Our family. Like she and Liam were a unit, and everyone else was an outsider trying to get in. I found posts about other women, too, girlfriends who hadn't lasted long. Eleanor always had a reason why they weren't suitable. Too career-focused. Too independent. Not family-oriented enough. Then I found something that made everything click. Eleanor had posted about Liam's engagement, but it was weird. Talking about how she'd finally approved of his choice. How this time he'd listened to her about what qualities mattered in a wife. How proud she was that he'd made the right decision. This time. Like Chloe had auditioned before and failed, and now she'd somehow passed Eleanor's test. I realized Liam hadn't proposed to Chloe. Not really. Eleanor had approved Chloe, and Liam had followed orders, just like he dumped her 7 years ago when Eleanor disapproved. Chloe thought she'd won him back. Thought she'd been chosen. But really, she'd just been accepted by the only person whose opinion Liam actually cared about. I sat there, staring at my screen, and something shifted in my brain. I'd spent a week thinking I'd lost, thinking Chloe had chosen someone better. But now I understood the truth. She hadn't upgraded. She'd volunteered for a nightmare. Signed up to spend her life competing with a mother-in-law who saw her as property her son was acquiring with her permission. For a moment, I actually felt sorry for Chloe. And then I remembered how she'd smiled telling me she'd said yes to someone else. How she'd asked me to appreciate her honesty. How she'd called 3 years of my life settling. The pity vanished fast. That's when another realization hit. One that made me pick up my phone. There was one person who didn't know the whole truth yet. One person making decisions based on incomplete information. And that person controlled everything in Liam's life. Eleanor had approved Chloe this time around, but she didn't know Chloe had accepted Liam's proposal while still wearing my engagement ring. Didn't know Chloe had been planning a wedding with me just 2 months ago. Didn't know her precious son was the other man in an overlapping situation. I opened a new message and started typing. Kept it simple. No emotions, just facts. I didn't ask for anything. Didn't demand anything. Just laid out exactly what had happened, and when. I attached a screenshot of Chloe's text about appreciating her honesty. Proof she'd been engaged to me while having lunch with her ex, proof she'd still been wearing my ring when she'd said yes to Liam. Then I put my phone face down on the table and waited. I didn't know what would happen. Didn't know if anything would happen. But I'd done exactly what Chloe had done to me. I'd been honest. I sent the message to Eleanor at 9 p.m. Put my phone in a drawer and tried to sleep. I didn't expect an immediate response, figured maybe she'd ignore it, or Liam would intercept it. But I'd done what I needed to do. It was out of my hands. I woke up the next morning to 17 missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize, and a text from Ben asking if I'd done something insane because someone from Chloe's company had been calling around. I made coffee, sat at my kitchen table, and opened my phone to find out. Apparently, Eleanor had driven to Chloe's office first thing. Walked straight past the reception desk. Found Chloe at her cubicle. The whole floor heard everything. Screaming about lying and manipulation, about trying to trap her son. About being the kind of woman who juggled relationships and expected to be rewarded for it. Security had to escort Eleanor out, but not before she'd made sure everyone in that building knew exactly what Chloe had done. Olivia, a woman from Chloe's office I'd met at a company holiday party, sent me a message describing the scene. She still had my number from Chloe's contact list. Olivia said it was the most dramatic thing that had ever happened on their floor, and Chloe had locked herself in a conference room afterward. Liam had shown up an hour later, not to defend Chloe or calm his mother, but to do damage control on his own reputation. I wasn't there, didn't see it firsthand. But apparently, the entire pharmaceutical sales division had front-row seats to Chloe's life falling apart. My phone rang that afternoon. Chloe's number. I almost didn't answer. When I did, she was crying. Actually crying, for the first time through this entire thing. She said she didn't understand what had happened. Liam had called her that morning and told her they were done. Said his mother was right about her character. Said he couldn't be with someone who'd overlap relationships like that. She kept saying it wasn't fair, that she'd been honest, that she'd done everything right. I asked her, did Liam use those exact words? My mother was right? She went quiet. Then she said yes. I could hear in her voice that she was finally understanding what she'd signed up for. She asked if we could talk, really talk, maybe figure things out. I told her no. She'd made her choice, called our 3 years settling, humiliated me in front of her parents, and now she wanted to come back because her backup plan had exploded. I told her, I hope you'll eventually be happy. I used her exact words from that night. And I hung up. She tried calling back 6 times, sent messages saying she'd made a mistake, that she'd been confused, that what we had was real, and she'd thrown it away for nothing. After the 6th call, I blocked her number and went back to work. Ben bought me a drink after our next flight together. Told me I looked better than I had in weeks, asked what had changed. I told him I'd realized something important, I hadn't lost Chloe to someone better. I just avoided being chosen for a disaster. The story got around. I think through Chloe's coworkers. Over the next few weeks, I heard updates I didn't ask for. Liam was already seeing someone new, a woman his mother had apparently introduced him to, more appropriate according to Eleanor's standards. They were engaged within 3 weeks, which would have seemed insane, except by that point, I understood Liam didn't make decisions. He just followed instructions. Chloe's reputation at work was destroyed. Everyone knew she'd been engaged to one man while having secret lunches with another. The public meltdown meant there was no way to spin it. She'd wanted passion and excitement. Instead, she got humiliation and unemployment rumors. Sarah called to check on me one evening. Asked if I felt guilty about sending that message to Eleanor. I thought about it honestly before answering. I told her I didn't. I'd done exactly what Chloe had done to me, been honest about an uncomfortable truth. Let someone make decisions with complete information. Sarah laughed and said that was the most diplomatic way she'd ever heard someone describe payback. I told her it wasn't payback, it was consequences. Chloe made choices. I made choices. Neither of us got to control what happened after that. 2 months later, I sold the engagement ring. Used the money to completely redo my bedroom. New mattress, new sheets, new everything. I went on a few dates. Nothing serious, just reminders that there were women out there who didn't see relationships as additions for something better. I ran into Chloe's mother at a grocery store about 3 months later. She looked at me like she wanted to say something, but couldn't figure out what. I nodded politely and kept walking. Didn't give her the chance to tell me I'd taken things too personally, or that I should have been more understanding. The thing about flying is you learn pretty quickly how to handle emergencies. You train for every possible disaster until your response becomes automatic. You don't panic. You don't freeze. You just work the problem until you're either safe or you're not. That's what I'd done with Chloe. Worked the problem. Made the decisions I needed to make. Landed safely, even if the approach had been rough. I thought about her sometimes. Wondered if she'd figured out yet that Liam had never actually chosen her, that she'd been approved like a purchase his mother had signed off on. Wondered if she understood that the passion she'd been chasing was just the drama of trying to win over someone who'd already broken her heart once. Mostly, though, I didn't think about her at all. I flew my routes, came home to an apartment that felt like mine again, made plans with friends who hadn't asked me to appreciate being discarded. 6 months after Chloe had sat at my kitchen table and announced she'd said yes to someone else, I was fine. Not heartbroken, not angry, just fine. I'd thought I was being replaced, that she'd found someone better and left me behind. But really, she'd just volunteered for a life where she'd never be anyone's first choice. And I'd been honest enough to make sure everyone involved knew exactly what they were choosing. Chloe wanted credit for her honesty. Wanted me to appreciate that she'd told me the truth instead of sneaking around. So, I'd given her the same courtesy. Been honest with the one person who actually made the decisions in Liam's life, and let the truth do whatever it was going to do. Turns out, honesty isn't always kind, but it's always fair. What would you have done in my situation?